We have installed Docker. Let's install Liferay on a Java EE server. In this case, we're going with the simplest possible way that we can go, simplest possible setup that we can get away with, which is Tomcat. Liferay, as it starts here so nicely, Liferay is platform agnostic, and for the most part, as long as you can provide each piece of the stack, you can run a myriad of configurations and combinations to run Liferay. Now, I love getting the question from customers, what's the system we actually recommend? Like, yes, we can run on Tomcat, JBoss, WebLogic, WebSphere, Wildfly. Is there any other system? Whatever, we can run on all of them. We can run on Postgres, MySQL, Oracle, SQL Server, DB2, HSQL, MariaDB. We can run on, is there anything else that we can run on? Various Java JDKs, the ABM, the Oracle one, OpenJDK, and so on. What's the combination that we actually recommend? That is the one question that I like most from customers, and you might be surprised, there is exactly one answer to this question. What is the system that we recommend? Well, let me turn that to the people outside, but you can answer the question as well. Before I give you the hint on what is the one configuration that we recommend, I typically first ask back, what is the system that you actually have under good control? What can you recover from in case there is a hazardous event on your server? What can you recover? How can you do disaster recovery and bring up the server as fast as possible? If you know how to operate WebSphere, but you have no clue about Tomcat, then I will do you a disservice to recommend Tomcat because I like running Tomcat. If you know how to run WebLogic or JBoss or Wildfly, same thing applies. Same thing with a database. What good is it recommending Oracle database when all of your other databases are MySQL or Postgres or vice versa? In other words, the answer to the one single system that we recommend typically starts with, what do you have experience on anyways? Because that is the system that you should leverage. If you have experience on Tomcat, running Tomcat with MySQL, that's what you should use. If you have no clue how to disaster recover such a system, might not be the best choice. As I like to say, this is the one answer that every consultant ever gives you. It depends. And the good ones then continue to answer what it depends on. Let's continue with this one. In general, when the term server is used, and we're quite generic here, so I apologize for any abuse of those individual words, then we mean a container that can be used to run a web application. Now, we make a difference between the web container, for example, Tomcat, lightweight option, just a servlet container, and that's fine for Liferay. We don't need more. But if you need more, if you integrate something with EJB or with other infrastructure in your web server, then you might need a full profile server where you have all of the Java EE stack running. Whatever part it is, we're going to cover what you need to go from your plain vanilla server, Tomcat, Wildfly, whatever, to a full running installation. Now the typical stack on there, I've covered them, and I think I thought of all of them. I'm not quite sure if I thought of SQL Server. We will need a database, which is any of these, DB2, MySQL, MariaDB, Postgres, Oracle, SQL Server. And we are starting with an embedded Elasticsearch, and we're changing that a little bit later. We'll also use Tomcat. That's a quite simple setup because Tomcat is, I would say, the easiest to set up. The exercise in there, which you'll find in the written material, basically has these steps. You will first unzip the exercises. I'm not quite sure. We wanted to change this if we rename the exercises folder. Basically, you end up with exercises folder on your disk with a setup for Tomcat and a setup for Wildfly. And in there, you will find the various Docker files that we need. then especially in the Tomcat folder, you will find a Docker Compose file, which I would like you to open and look at it. Well, identify what's in there. And I promise if you have some technical background, which I hope you have in the DevOps course, then you will understand what it does. We're still going through it. Then you can go into the individual subdirectories, into the Tomcat Docker file, and look what it does. We have another file for the MySQL service, and then we can actually start up Liferay Tomcat 1, which is our first container. And the Liferay Tomcat 1 gives you a hint that a little bit later we might have a second one on top of that. Now that's as far as this exercise description goes. Let me quickly go through it again. You'll first, of course, just unpack all of the exercises that we have, these 2 gig files with all of the software that we'll need. And you inspect Docker Compose, you inspect the Docker file, and the nature of them. This is what I want to cover up front, to be explicit. The Docker file for Tomcat will basically take a Liferay bundle, which we have, which is a pre-configured Tomcat version, and copy it into the image. It will then, and you will see exactly what it does in this Docker file, it will then take a few of configuration files that we have prepared, copy them on top of this image. And that's basically it. And you will see that easily within the Docker file. Docker Compose says, well, we want to have a Liferay Tomcat 1 image, which depends on a MySQL image. Meaning, if we don't have a MySQL container running, we don't need to bother starting Liferay Tomcat 1. And well, that's the simple setup. And those are the dependencies that we have declared or that we will declare in this Docker Compose file. And once that is done, we're going to go into a few Docker commands, that is Docker Compose build and Docker Compose run, and you'll have your containers running. So Liferay is, I would say, platform agnostic. As long as you can provide each piece of the stack, you can use a myriad, a literal myriad, a figurative myriad of systems, of combinations to run Liferay. Now, web container could say servlet container. I rather like to say servlet container, like Tomcat is one, provides only the necessary components for deploying applications. Example for that are Apache Tomcat. I would say it's probably the most run installation or most run system for Liferay. And JBoss, there's a JBoss with a web profile that has nothing more. Full profile, if we go full profile with a full profile server, then we'll have all of the JPA, EJBs, and so on. And the examples are, I would say, the big iron ones, especially the commercial ones. That is either Oracle WebLogic, IBM WebSphere, that is Red Hat's JBoss, or that is Wildfly. What do we have? We have something that stores all of our data, including everything from permission configuration to user data and web content. Well, we didn't cover user data, web content, and so on at all, but this is everything that goes into the database. In our case, MySQL, if you have looked at the files, and in other cases, in whatever database there is. So here we are with a full summary. If you need to peek, and if you want to make those notes.